His intervention was actually positive in a sense because the Prime Minister was able to return to Lesotho, albeit with the South African security escort which is mandated by SADC. And also there was a promise that the parliament which had been suspended or dissolved was going to be reconvened sometime later this month. Therefore, to that extent, I do think that there's been positive intervention. But the key problem right now is a security one due to the fact that the ex-military chief seemed to have taken away some weapons and has taken away some sections of the army into some hiding. That in itself poses a serious security challenge.
What is the role of SANDF and the SAPS in Lesotho, Doctor?
What has been presented is that they are mandated under the SADC, negotiated approach to provide security for the government officials and for the parliament as well. Because right now, given the fact that the police were effectively disarmed and some of them had to leave, they have to regroup, they have to return to their duties. So at this point, they are providing that security in a minimalist mode.
Are we likely to see a military intervention by SADC perhaps?
That one is 50-50 in the event the renegade ex-army chief doesn't return the weapons and doesn't want to comply with the civilian control of the army. You're most likely going to have SADC coming in to put pressure or even disarm, the sections of the army. And that in itself is a situation that I think will mean the extreme end of this particular crisis.
What, in your opinion, Doctor, should who, in your opinion, should take the lead in facilitating the process or the peace and stability process in Lesotho between SADC and South Africa?
Can you repeat your question because I had a feed of another voice?
Just to recap, Doctor, who, in your opinion, should take the lead in facilitating this peace and stability process in Lesotho between SADC and South Africa?
Well, I do think that South Africa has direct interest, including the fact that most of your Gauteng urban water supply comes from the Lesotho Dam, and also the fact that you do have the hydroelectricity supply from Lesotho. So South Africa has a direct interest, and if the Lesotho government were to collapse, it is South Africa which will be receiving the refugees from Lesotho. So to that extent, it has a direct interest. But for legitimacy, it has to work within the mandate of SADC.
Now, we've just seen an insert there of the renegade army chief, Kamori, that says he's still in charge and he's refusing to speak to SADC. What do you think is the likely outcome of this?
Well, I do think that at some point they'll just give him an ultimatum and those who are with him to surrender. And if that is not happening, you're most likely going to have military action taken because it is a very dangerous situation. Even if a parliament were to sit without the guarantee that you do have security there, SADC would either be providing permanent security around those facilities or they just have to disarm the renegade section of the army and assist in the establishment of a professionalized army.
Now, the DA has asked the South African government to lift what it called the veil of secrecy over the country's role in Lesotho. What do you think could be behind the curtains in this matter?
Well, I don't think there is much in reality. In this case, it's a mere situation where a country was in a crisis. SADC comes in to assist as they normally do, whether in South Sudan, in the case of the AU, or in the DRC, or in Madagascar. But I guess DA might just be alluding to the fact that, among other things, the Guptas seem to have been involved and they were appointed as goodwill diplomats to attract investments. In that sense, because of their association with the president, that in itself might be the DA's main, concern in this particular case. You remember that even in the Central African Republic, they were questioning the business interest of some people within that region who may have enticed the country to deploy and commit soldiers.
Now, we talked about the role of the SANDF and the SAPS, Dr. Lilbadeli, but what do you think is the mandate of the South African diplomatic officials in Lesotho?
It is to facilitate these negotiations between all the contending parties and to make sure that the kinds of SADC efforts are supported within Lesotho. That at this stage would be their primary mandate.
And then lastly, Dr. President Zuma is now going to Lesotho again in an attempt to facilitate the peace and stability in the country there. Do you think he'll be successful this time around?
I do think that he may see through the re-establishment of Parliament and those commitments, and also the government being back in place as well as the police force. But the key issue which they will put before him as a demand, which will be a litmus test, is the one of disarming the renegade section of the army.
Doctor, thank you so much for your time and joining us here on AM.
Thank you.
That is political analyst Dr. Somadoda Fikeni joining us from our Pretoria studios.